The story called Bullies slapped a disabled girl in a diner. An hour later, bikers walked in, began on a warm morning when the sun painted the town of Maplewood in gold. The Maplewood Diner, a small place known for pancakes and friendly smiles, smelled like butter and fresh coffee. People came here every morning to relax, laugh, and enjoy breakfast. But on this day, something painful happened, something that made the whole diner feel cold. At a window booth sat a young girl named Clara, who used a wheelchair because she was born with a spinal condition. She had soft eyes, gentle hands, and a brave heart that had learned to fight many battles. Clara looked at her pancakes like they were a small celebration of her simple joy. But her hands shook a little because she always felt people staring at her. The next booth had 3 teenage boys, loud and proud, laughing in a mean way. They looked at Clara as if she was a joke. At first they whispered, then laughed louder. Clara kept her eyes on her plate, hoping they would stop. But bullies never stop when they think they have power. One boy leaned over with a cruel smile and slapped her plate off her lap. Pancakes, syrup, and butter crashed onto the diner's floor. The sound echoed in Clara's heart like breaking glass. Another boy pushed her wheelchair back, making her jump with fear. Her hands held the wheels tightly, her eyes filling with tears that she tried so hard to hide. The diner froze. Forks stopped, cups stopped, and even the old ceiling fan seemed to go silent. The boys laughed like they had done something funny, something brave. But bravery is never cruel. Cruelty is always a sign of weakness. People in the diner lowered their heads, unsure what to do. Some were scared, some were shocked, and some simply didn't want trouble. The waitress, who was carrying hot coffee, paused in fear. Clara bent down, embarrassed, trying to clean the mess with shaky hands. Her heart felt so heavy that she could barely breathe. She wondered why the world was so unkind to people like her, people who never hurt anyone. Just then a gentle hand reached out. It was an older man with gray hair and soft eyes. He picked up her plate without saying much and placed it carefully on the table. "Don't mind them," he whispered kindly. But Clara could see fear in his eyes too. The boys were bigger than him and louder too. Still, his kindness warmed Clara's heart just a little. She sat there quietly, wishing she could disappear. Her chest hurt more than her pride. She wanted someone, anyone, to stand up for her. But no one did. She looked out the window, hoping the hour would pass quickly. The boys bragged about how funny they were. They slapped their table, laughed loudly, and acted like they were heroes. Clara closed her eyes and prayed. She prayed for strength, for courage, for something to change. She didn't know that something was coming, something strong, loud, and unexpected. Something that would change everything in the diner forever. About 1 hour later, just when Clara's heart was sinking deeper into sadness, a strange sound started to rise from outside. It wasn't a car, it wasn't a bus, and it wasn't the wind. It was a deep, heavy rumble, like distant thunder rolling across the sky. People inside the diner looked around. The rumble grew louder and louder. Forks stopped again. Conversations ended again. Even the bullies paused for a moment. When everyone looked out the big glass windows, they saw dozens of motorcycles rolling into the parking lot. Big, shiny bikes with metal glinting in the sunlight. The engines roared like lions waking from sleep. They parked in a perfect line, one after another, like soldiers ready for battle. And the jackets they wore had one name, Hell's Angels. The bullies' smiles faded. Their faces slowly changed from proud to pale. They whispered among themselves, but their voices shook. Everyone in Maplewood knew about Hell's Angels. They were brave, fierce, and never afraid to stand up for someone who needed help. When the door to the diner opened, the little bell above it jingled softly, but the silence that followed was louder than thunder. The first man who walked in was tall like a mountain. His beard was long, his eyes sharp like steel, and his vest was covered in patches that told stories of years on the road. Behind him came more bikers, strong, serious, and powerful. The air inside the diner felt heavy, thick with tension. Clara froze, unsure if she should be scared or relieved. The leader's name, as people later learned, was Roar. He scanned the diner slowly. His eyes moved over every table, every face, and finally landed on Clara. Something changed in his expression. His hard eyes softened, as if he understood her pain without her saying a single word. He walked toward her with slow, heavy steps. His boots thumped on the tiled floor like a heartbeat. When he reached Clara, he knelt down beside her, gently placing one of his huge hands on the arm of her wheelchair. "You okay, sweetheart?" he asked in a voice that was calm but strong. Clara nodded, even though she wasn't really okay. Roar looked over at the boys. They froze like statues. Their faces turned white as snow. He didn't shout. He didn't push them. He simply stood up and stared at them with eyes that carried thunder inside. He said something to them. No one heard the exact words, but whatever he said was powerful. The boys began to tremble. Their bravado melted like ice in the sun. One boy slid out of the booth, then another, then the third. They stumbled toward the exit, unable to look at Clara. They walked past the huge line of motorcycles outside, the engines rumbling like warning growls. They ran away, disappearing around the corner, their pride shattered. Inside, the diner let out the breath it had been holding. People whispered, gasped, and shook their heads in disbelief. But Roar wasn't done. He called the waitress and placed a large bill, bigger than the cost of 10 meals, on the table. "Get her anything she wants," he said. "Anything. Pancakes, pie, milkshake, the whole menu if she asks." Clara's eyes filled with tears, but this time they were tears of relief, not pain. Roar did something no one expected. He gently removed his leather vest, the one covered with patches, pride, and years of history, and draped it over Clara's shoulders. "Your family now," he said quietly. Those words wrapped around Clara like armor, like a shield, like love. The diner became silent again, but not from fear this time, from emotion. People wiped their eyes, touched their hearts, and whispered words of love for the little girl who had suffered so much that morning. Clara held the vest close to her chest. It felt heavy, but in a comforting way, like it carried the strength she never had before. The waitress brought her fresh pancakes with extra syrup and a tall strawberry milkshake. Clara smiled for the first time that day, a small but brave smile. Roar and the other bikers sat around her like a protective wall. They didn't laugh loudly or make the moment big. They simply stayed near her so she wouldn't feel alone. For the first time in years, Clara felt safe. Truly safe. The older man who had helped her earlier gave her a thumbs up and a soft smile. He seemed relieved that someone stronger had stepped in. Outside, the motorcycles waited, shining in the sun like guardians. Inside, the waitress hugged Clara gently and said, "You're never invisible here. Ever again." Those words stayed in Clara's heart. A few customers came to her table, offering warm smiles, kind words, and promises that they would always stand up next time. Clara didn't speak much, but her silence was full of gratitude. She felt something powerful awakening inside her: courage, hope, the understanding that she mattered. When breakfast ended, Roar stood up slowly and placed both hands on Clara's shoulders. "If anyone ever bothers you again," he said, "you tell us. Family protects family." The other bikers nodded firmly. Clara's tears spilled again, but they were happy tears. Roar gave a gentle smile before walking out with his crew. The roar of the motorcycles shook the ground as they rode away, but somehow Clara wasn't scared of the sound anymore. She loved it. It reminded her of power, of kindness, of the moment her story changed. She stayed in the diner for a while, finishing her pancakes peacefully. No one stared at her now with pity. They looked at her with respect. She felt taller even though she sat in her wheelchair. When she finally left the diner, people held the door open for her, and the sun felt warmer than before. She rolled down the sidewalk, holding Roar's vest in her lap like a treasure. For the first time in a long time, she felt strong. Truly strong. She realized something important. Cruelty exists, but so does courage. Hurt happens, but so does healing. And sometimes the bravest people look rough on the outside, but have the softest, kindest hearts. That night she told her parents everything. They cried, hugged her, and said they were proud of her for staying strong. Clara hugged the vest again and whispered a promise to herself, "I will never let bullies make me small again." And she meant it. The next day, people in town talked about the incident. But they didn't talk about the bullies. They talked about Clara. Her bravery. Her quiet strength. Her tears that turned into hope. The story spread so fast that even the school heard about it. And suddenly, no one dared to bully her again. Not because they feared the bikers, but because they respected her. She was no longer the girl people ignored. She was the girl people admired. And whenever she felt scared, she touched the vest and remembered the day strangers became family. In the end, Clara realized that kindness can rise from the darkest moments. And sometimes the heroes we expect the least become the ones who rewrite the ending of our story. This was the heart of Bullies slapped a disabled girl in a diner. An hour later, bikers walked in. And it became a story Maplewood would never forget.